What is up? Good morning. Welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot. It is still Dynasty season, but I have had enough of rookie drafts. So we're going to go ahead and jump into a Dynasty Startup draft. And last week I tried to make it boring and failed miserably because of my draft order. So I was going to go boring this week with one QB, but we can't just be completely boring. It's time to get into some tight end premiums. And if we're talking tight ends, you know we have Kelce Singh as our guest. The draft room is full. We are ready to draft. Let's get into it. Good morning and welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot, Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, Austin Amandolia. Austin, good morning. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. So two things. One, I'm excited to bring the DFS Academy crew back together in the off season. Two, you got me all in rookie mode. So I've ranked like 70 rookies in the past week, but then you're like, just kidding. We're not doing that anymore.
There will be plenty of time for rookie drafts later. So, the DFS Academy crew back at it this morning with Kelce Singh, Kelly in Phoenix. Good morning, Kelly. Waking up so early for me, and I very much appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Yeah, I was up and I'm scrolling and got my coffee. I'm ready to go.
Perfect. And like I mentioned, if you guys followed the DFS Academy at any point this season, Kelly was the tight end queen, which is not a phrase I should probably be saying in the fantasy football community, but
Fine. I love a good tight end.
There you go. She loves drafting tight ends, and she always would build her lineups with two of them. So if I'm going to do a tight end premium draft, who the fuck else am I inviting? So we are going to have some fun with it. Let me get the draft up on the board so we can actually start talking about this thing. So that is our draft and our drafters. I'm going to click start draft so that we can actually start drafting. And Kelly, you have the first pick while I go ahead and start describing this thing. So as mentioned, it is going to be tight end premium. It is a dynasty startup, but it is one QB. I don't really care that much about Superflex. I love Superflex. Just every draft is Superflex, but I kept the third round reversal in at the advisement of our community. If you've never watched Mock It Like It's Hot before, Kelly and Austin will recap their drafts. They're going to talk about the picks they made and the reasons they made them. I'm going to give you an oops of the draft, something that I saw as a mistake, all in good fun so we can learn from it, but we are not going to recap and rate every team. That is not what this show is for. The show is about learning through mock drafting. We don't care about what the best team is. We care about what the best picks were, and we're going to look for those interesting picks. Before we get into the draft, let's mention our drafters. Kelly and Phoenix from the 1 spot, Austin from the 2 spot. So my folks are drafting back to back. Our good friend Kevin, the boys 222 at the 3 spot, Base Brody at 4, Fantasy Dinosaur, the name gets cut off, Fantasy Dinosaur at 5, El Jefe at 6, K Yeats at 7, Shia LaBeouf, who worked his way into the draft and kept the draft chat completely live this morning with his DJing skills. He's picking from 8, Casey Myers at 9, Philadelphia at 10, Diamond Mike at 11, and Gator Raiders, who has drafted every single draft with us to this point, picking from the 12 spot. As mentioned, this is tight end premium. A reminder to everybody in the world, there is no tight end premium setting on Sleeper for mock drafts. So this is going to be drafters' discretion if they remember that this is a tight end premium draft. And Kelly, my first question to you is, do you think tight end premium even matters? Does it help the problem that some tight ends are just not very valuable in fantasy football anymore, and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? What are your thoughts on tight end premium in dynasty or just fantasy in general?
I love tight end premium. I think in fantasy in general, it adds another layer to the game and it forces people to think outside of the box. To me, it does. And that's why I love playing 2 tight ends. And often I'll play 2 tight ends, regardless of if it's tight end premium, just because of the nature of the evolution of the role.
And so the question is, and Austin, I know you're going to have some thoughts on this, but Kelly, I'm going to stick with you here. Right now in fantasy with tight ends, there's the haves and there's the have-nots. And obviously you're going to take a tight end early, and you did, but we're going to talk more about that later. But obviously you're going to be one of the haves. You know who the good tight ends are, and you're going to land them. But then the teams at the bottom, does tight end premium actually solve the haves and the have-nots problem? Because I just feel like the better players just get better and the worse fall further down.
Does it solve the haves and the have-nots? I think it does, because different people put different values obviously on different roles. A lot of people lately, well, let's rewind like to a decade ago when running back, it was running back when you were playing in any classic league. And then you're coming fast forward to the last maybe 4 years, and wide receiver became all the rage, and everybody was drafting wide receivers first. Look at Justin Jefferson, for instance, the last 2 or 3 years will have been the number one pick because of catching. And now tight ends, I think, are evolving into that role. And now everybody can have a piece of the pie depending on who captures that elite receiver. It's receivers now. It's not tight end and wide receiver. It's receivers.
And I think that's fair, which perfectly leads into Austin's fix for the whole problem. So, Austin, I'm going to let you go because if anybody's watched the show for the past 2 seasons, they know what your fix is, but I love it. It's such a great point. But before you get into it, Austin, Joe Ortiz would make an argument that the tight end position is coming back. Just watch and see. And I think we saw a little bit of that last year with a few breakout rookie performances, specifically Sam Laporta. And then we have, Brock Bowers coming in this year that people are pretty excited about. So we may see a resurgence of the tight end that could completely eliminate this quandary that the fantasy community is in, Austin. But if it doesn't, you have a solution.
Yeah, my go-to solution for the never-ending tight end conundrum is to have a receiver flex position where you can put in a wide receiver or a tight end. So you don't even have to play a tight end, which is just beautiful.
Oh, man. We're like opposite ends of the spectrum on this then.
Yes and no, because if you look at what you said, Kelly, you said you're just looking for the best receiver. Well, guess what?
True.
Austin is also looking for the best receiver.
Yeah, Austin. There you go. It's also funny though, because we also tend to be on the opposite ends of the spectrum on our DFS lineup.
You really
do. You'll be like Mark Andrews every week. I'm like, let's see. Is Kate Otten cheap enough?
What I love is I'm loud and obnoxious. You two are two of the more softer spoken people, but you frequently have differences in opinion and differences in strategy. So you're almost arguing, but you talk so quietly you could never tell you were arguing. Meanwhile, it sounds like I'm yelling at you the entire fucking show. So that's just a preview of DFS Academy to come later. But Austin, I digress. Continue.
No, but I like the receiver flex position. I will admit though, I do also love some tight end premium. So I like both ends of the spectrum. I also just love fantasy football, so that helps. But I think if you're actually trying to solve for balancing the tight end position, the receiver flex is the best way to do it, because then you're just putting a receiver in that spot, whether it's a tight end or a receiver. If you're just looking to spam the positional advantage, go tight end premium, because that's fun as hell. But that's the solution.
So Josh brought up, he almost was going to put Laporta on the thumbnail, but he didn't want to have to explain to Mark Andrews, Kelly's boyfriend, why he pivoted to Sam Laporta. But Kelly may be pivoting as well, and we're starting to see these tight ends come off the board. One of the things you guys didn't bring up, and I think the point of tight end tight end premium, where it does make the better players better. But what it does is it starts to bring some of those lower tight ends, Kelly, into the possibility of playing in your flex spot. Oh, and Kelly busting out the Mark Andrews jersey. But it starts to bring some of those lower tight ends into the possibility of playing in a flex spot. Whereas this is a 12-team league, but in a 10-team league, you may only see 10 tight ends every week. But sometimes, and we talk about this a lot during the season, the best performances come from tight ends you would have never thought to start. So if you have a bunch of flex spots in tight end premium, you might start seeing some of those weirder names in there. And Kelly, I think that just kind of opens it up and gives more accessibility to the position in fantasy football.
I don't think any of those names are weird that you might want to put in a flex spot, because they're bringing consistent points every week. I will play a tight end in every flex spot you give me. And if you remember, I believe that I won or was close to winning. I can't remember now, but I was winning the entire season in the Flexi League.
Yes. You've definitely made it to the championship. I don't remember if you won.
Yeah, I don't think I won. I think I got knocked out in the championships or the semis, but the whole season I was in first, and I will credit that to being flexi.
All right. I'm going to keep an eye on it. Now, this is a third round reversal here, Kelly. So you're going to make the 212, but then you don't pick again to the 312. But Kelly stays on brand. I was going to see if that was going to happen. Guys, that actually brings me to the next question I kind of wanted to ask you guys, which is, Older tight ends versus younger tight ends in Dynasty. For longevity, the tight end position can play quite a while, at least until they're 30 years old. And then obviously we have Travis Kelce still going at it at 34, 35 at this point. Austin, you build your dynasty teams, at least on this show, many, many different ways. You will bring up, you'll build to win now, you'll build just all younger guys. Looking specifically at the tight end position, does age scare you off completely like it does at some other positions?
Yeah, first off, to be clear, that's because I suck at Dynasty. So I have to practice a lot of different strategies to figure out what works for me. I don't tend to worry about age as much with the elite of the elite tight ends. Joel brings this up all the time. Our good friend Joel Worth, host of the Dynasty After Party. Tony Gonzalez was an elite fantasy tight end until he was 38 years old. And I'm latched on to that narrative, and I feel that way about guys like Travis Kelce, that they have a lot of shelf life on them, because I do think, some of it's to do with how slowly tight ends have historically developed at the beginning of their careers. Like typically tight ends aren't breaking out until they're like 26, 27. That's when we start to see receivers starting to hit their peak. So they're just like, there's like a lag to when tight ends do. So I worry about the age a little bit less with the tight ends. So I'm not scared off about guys like Travis Kelce who are hitting their 33, 34 year season.
Now, Kelly, obviously you love the entire position, so I don't think you're going to be scared off by age either. You grabbed the new hotness, the tight end one in Sam Laporta with the first pick of this draft, and we're not going to focus just on who you're taking right now. But what I want to ask you is, when do you start to panic? When do we start to panic, if at all, about Mark Andrews, who's not old by any stretch? Let me be clear. I make this joke every week that I have to talk about aging players who are 15 years younger than I am. But when do we start to panic about these tight ends as they age? Because I know you would have taken Mark Andrews without question if he was there with your second.
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken him first. There is a small question of durability. I want to see how he comes back from this injury. But I'm not worried per se. I think that he's had the best training and the best therapists, and he has the best quarterback. So in Mark Andrews' case, I'm not super worried. And in tight ends in general, I agree with Austin. I don't think we need to worry as much about them aging. I think what we need to worry about more is who's throwing to them, and are they getting the targets that they need to succeed.
Would you say, were you surprised by Kelce going as the second tight end in the second round? But more importantly, are you surprised by that run that we saw there where Diamond Mike takes Kelce, Philadelphia takes Andrews, and then Brock Bowers, the new hotness, goes at the end of that train? Does that order surprise you a little bit?
The order surprises me. The strategy does not, because I came in hot right away with the tight end, and we're discussing tight end premium. And as these drafters, they're listening, they're seeing, and I think it starts a run.
Yeah.
But I am surprised to see Kelce go so early. But what I do like in both Diamond Mike and Philadelphia happens to be the stack, which is what I'm about to do myself right now. And it's one of my favorite things to do is stack a quarterback with a tight end.
I thought you would have taken a quarterback who could play tight end, not just Kyler Murray, who's diminutive out there. Kelly, it's back to a regular snake draft now, so you do have back-to-back picks. Austin, basically same question. You and I have always been hyper supportive of Travis Kelce, and our good friend Joel, as you've brought up, has always pointed out to us that tight ends can play forever. But does the order of those three picks, when we saw Brock Bowers in the last time we did a startup draft as the first tight end off the board, this draft he goes fourth overall and at the back end of an older player run?
Yeah, and just confirming, because I was making a pick when you first said the run of players, you're looking at Kelce, Andrews, and Bowers.
Precisely. Yep.
Yeah. Boy, it really just depends on your team build. So like Diamond Mike going for Tyreek Hill out the gate, clearly going to win now strategy. You're not taking on that age risk and that retirement risk, given that Hill has already said he wants to retire if you're not going to win now strategy. So with that, like definitely take Travis Kelce. On the flip side, Casey Myers seems to be doing build young strategy, get Brees
Yeah.
Hall, get Jalen Waddle. So yeah, Brock Bowers. So I think it's about team build at that point. If I were to just strictly rank them as who is the better dynasty asset, I mean, I think I have to go Brock Bowers first purely because of the age. Like if I'm ranking those three, I'll go Bowers first and then Kelce, Andrews.
Mm-hmm. I'm good to go Bowers, Andrews, Kelce.
So Kelly, I haven't had anybody on the show who's really ready to talk a lot about Brock Bowers, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here if you haven't done a ton of research, but you're willing to put him both of two established tight ends. What have you seen about Brock Bowers that makes you that confident that he's going to be able to step in and essentially be Sam Laporta and not be Kyle Pitts?
I would only do it in Dynasty.
Okay.
If it was redraft, I would not. Or if it was keeper, I would not. Any kind of classic fantasy, I would not. If it's Dynasty, then yes. And even with my current build, I'm still aiming low with age because that I prefer some of the older tight ends. And older, like you said, is in perspective. But I'm aiming for talent. I'm aiming for youth. And I like the Bowers pick above the Andrews and Kelce for that reason and Dynasty only.
Perfect. As we about to finish up round 4 here, I like to do a recap after round 3. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you guys, any sleeper tight ends moving into next season? These can be dynasty picks for the long haul or even just redraft picks because we are focusing on the tight ends. Are there any guys who we could see have big pop seasons like Sam Laporta or the emergence we saw of Trey McBride? I'm just mentioning Kelly's entire team at this point. But Austin, are there any guys that are on your radar right now that you think could really surprise people next season?
I mean, is it sleeper enough to say Kyle Pitts?
I knew you were going to. I literally saw his name as I was finishing the question. I was like, he's going to say Kyle Pitts. No, I think it is at this point, but go ahead.
I mean, I think it's time. Like he's had 2 seasons with Arthur Smith trying to ground and pound and being unsuccessful at it. And also 2 seasons dealing with injury. Like that's part of the narrative that people don't get. Like Atlanta was very quiet about Kyle Pitts' injuries over the past couple of seasons. And he has been dealing with that. And that's part of the narrative of his production. But let's not forget, of the receivers out there, he is one that has already had 1,000-yard receiving season. He's one of the few. And he's only 23. He's still just 23. Like
younger than people coming into this draft.
Right. So I feel good about Kyle Pitts, both from dynasty and a redraft perspective this year. I think if I were to just strictly go redraft, I think Brock Bowers might actually be a little bit of a sleeper because I do think people are discounting him more than they should. Like he's an incredible athlete. Everybody knew that he was getting the ball on almost every play, and still he was producing with Carson Beck as his quarterback. Like Carson Beck might not get drafted. Sorry, Faith. Your quarterback dream sweetheart at Georgia might not get drafted, and yet Brock Bowers still slayed.
Yeah, Brock Bowers did it through many quarterbacks and obviously held his own there. And redraft, my concern is, will people be chasing the Sam Laporta dragon, which is what I'm going to refer to it this season because everybody wants to catch that lightning in the bottle. Kelly, any sleepers?
Chime in on that same question?
Oh, 100%. I was literally about to ask you. Please do. If I want to hear sleeper tight ends, Kelly, I want to hear your opinion, plain and simple. So
I mean, this is going to probably come as a horrible fate for all of us. But outside of Trey McBride and outside of the Cardinals going 0 to hero, I was asked on another show, who do I think is going from 0 to hero in the NFL? And I brought up the Bears. I think the Bears are coming up with an amazing build this season and could do really well. So Cole Kmet, my buddy from Super Bowl week.
Yeah.
It's Cole Kmet season again.
I ended my Cole Kmet hatred last year, plain and simple. I understood he is finally coming into his own. We are seeing better play from him. And now we're going to see a good quarterback who we're going to talk about later, throwing him the ball in an offense where he's not the number 1 wide receiver. Because last year, DJ Moore was still learning that offense, and Cole Kmet was still a featured part of that offense. And I'm not saying he's not going to be featured. I mean, I am. He's not going to be featured, but that could actually play into his benefit where defenses cannot worry about Cole Kmet because you have to worry about Keenan Allen and DJ Moore now. And there's a chance they're still going to go with another rookie wide receiver. I'm very interested. DeAndre Swift is going to be a problem there. That Bears offense could change. And I love your 0 to hero reference for Trey McBride. I don't know that we can call Kmet a 0, though I've called him a 0 many, many, many times. But he certainly could be a hero next year. I think that's a very, very interesting take. Before we move on, I want to recap the draft a little bit. So I'm going to run through the first 2 rounds real quick, but then I'm going to ask you guys players about the first couple of rounds. So Kelly starts off the draft with Sam Laporta in this tight end premium. Austin goes Justin Jefferson. Then we have CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Marvin Harrison, Breece Hall, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Jahmyr Gibbs. Then it flips over, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Brock Bowers, which we talked about, Chris Olave, Puka Nacua. Love seeing my man in the second round. Dalton Kincaid, we're going to need to talk about. Josh Allen, his quarterback, goes right after him. Garrett Wilson, Malik Neighbors, Jalen Hurts, Trey McBride, Kelly ends the round, and then Kyle Pitts happens to be the first pick of the third round. First thing I want to start is we're going to keep talking about tight ends, guys. So we had 9 tight ends go in the first 3 rounds. Austin loves when I ask this question, so I'm going to start with you, Austin. Anybody who doesn't belong and anybody who should be in these rounds. And actually, I want to bring up a couple of comments before you get answering here, Austin, because I asked about sleeper tight ends. And first, Zion earlier in the show brought up he believes tight ends can last longer. And he brings up Evan Ingram as a sleeper tight end. And then I love that Scampers brings up Colby Parkinson, who ends up in Los Angeles and could just be the starter there. It's a really interesting situation in a Jim Harbaugh offense. So my question is, Austin, looking back at these first 3 rounds, is there anybody who shouldn't be here or anybody who should?
Yeah. Dalton Kincaid should not be there, in my opinion. I don't feel like he's going to end up being the target hog that we would like for him to be in a Josh Allen-led offense. I also don't think that Buffalo wants to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. I think that they really want to get to a more balanced position, a more balanced style of offense. And they always do this thing. They have 5 different receiving options on any given week. So I don't think he's going to be that clear target hog that you need in a tight end premium to warrant that draft capital. I also am not a huge fan of Travis Etienne in general. I feel like he doesn't get the type of usage that we would like to see from him. Like, he's a good runner and he's a good catcher, but they don't pass the ball to him. So I would rather take someone like Kyron Williams, even Rome Odunze, like take a receiver ahead of Etienne and worry about running back later.
Yeah. I caught shit from, I can't remember who our guest was now, but when I mentioned Dalton Kincaid among the elite tight ends, our guest was not happy during that show. And Kelly, I thought that would be a weird one as well. So I'll ask you the same, Kelly. Does Dalton Kincaid belong this early? And if he doesn't, is there anybody who's going later at the tight end position who you think should have gone ahead of him?
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised David Njoku fell all the way to
I
the
was
fifth.
wondering if you would bring him up because he happens to be your best friend.
He's my new bestie. If you haven't seen the photo, we've gotten very up close and personal. He smells very delicious. He gives great hugs. And he's an enormous human being who proved that on the field. He plows down anybody in his way. He's so tall and he's so big. I really liken it to the way he commands the field to Derrick Henry in a sense. And he's just impossible to pull down. And he proved that last season. So I was like, oh my gosh, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Because everybody wants me to win tight end bully. I'm actually need to copy this lineup because I'm really in love with it right now.
Kelly's going to be petitioning that I make this league live after this draft.
I might need
Speaking
this.
of which, I don't have the comments like right here in front of me. And I'm going to go ahead and just throw this in here right now because Josh saying something similar to me. David Njoku smelling delicious was not the fantasy analysis I thought I was going to get this morning, but it's the fantasy analysis we all needed, plain and simple, because where else are you going to get that kind of analysis? Someone in the chat, and I forget who it was, asked about joining some Dynasty leagues because they have not played in Dynasty before. And then Rachel brought up, and this is what I want to bring up, Rachel brought up that our good friend Casey Kasem is looking for people for brand new Dynasty leagues where she is going to pair new people to Dynasty with people who are experienced Dynasty managers to relieve some of the stress that comes around playing in your first anxiety or your first dynasty league and get rid of some of that anxiety. So Casey Kasem, which is I believe it's at the Casey Kasem on Twitter. Find her, connect with her. She's going to help you guys get into some dynasty leagues. Let's jump into the draft a little bit. So on top of this being tight end premium, but we've spent the entire first half of the show talking tight ends. This is also a 1 QB, and I'm a little shocked at how many QBs went in the first 3 rounds. And I was going to focus on that, but I want to take it to the QB of the hour, and that is Mr. Caleb Williams. He goes here at the 5'9" as the 8th overall quarterback in a 12-team league. And if you watched my show last night with no pun intended, Chrissy Freud did not have the best things to say about Caleb Williams. Austin, you have a differing opinion about Caleb Williams. So talk about Caleb Williams and talk about some of the things that Chrissy said that you don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'm just a big fan of his game. Like, he has shown that he can navigate a dirty pocket. He has the creativity to, escape pressure, to create whenever schemes break down, find his receivers. I mean, he's making true NFL passes in a tough situation. I think Joel brings up some interesting criticisms of how, he's doing a primarily shotgun-based offense. So there's some questions about translation to the NFL. But the thing that really got me when I was listening to the conversation about Caleb Williams last night is the conversation about some of the intangible aspects. And I just think that's very overblown. Like, to me, like, a player going and crying in the stands, being passionate about the game, that's just passion. That's showing that he cares. I think he cares so much. And we saw that, and we saw it in such a potent and vulnerable way that I'm here for it. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Caleb Williams wants to be the best and wants to win football games. I think NFL teams are going to love that. So that doesn't scare me off at all. I think, men should be allowed to cry. They should be allowed to go and cry with their mom. That's a beautiful moment. And I think we should see more of it. It would be great for young athletes to know, oh, I can show emotion on the field. That's pretty cool. And I can still be the number 1 quarterback drafted in the draft. That's just an incredible story to me. So I'm a big fan of Caleb Williams. I'm fine with taking him in the 5th round from a fantasy perspective.
First and foremost, I love that you brought that up because, I didn't catch it so much when Chrissy said it last night. I was more taken aback by the fact that she doesn't love Caleb Williams the way the rest of the world loves Caleb Williams. But it's a really good point. I don't want to bust this dude's balls for having some emotion. Kelly, it's a very generic take, but in the Caleb Williams film that I've watched, but I guess it's just Caleb Williams now. But anyway, in the film that I've watched, I can't help but just see Patrick Mahomes' game. And I'm not saying he's as good as Patrick Mahomes, but he has certainly taken what Patrick Mahomes does well from a strategy standpoint and made that his game. Are we setting this kid up to fail because of the expectations we're putting on him ourselves? But you just mentioned you don't hate that Chicago Bears offense. I know you're about to make back-to-back picks, but he's coming into an offense that is so very different from the offense that Justin Fields came into. Justin Fields was throwing to Darnell Mooney, whereas this kid is coming in with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, 2 of arguably the best route runners in the NFL, and now established Cole Kmet, who knows how to score touchdowns, and DeAndre Swift, who is an excellent pass catcher out of the backfield. Caleb Williams is coming into an almost ideal situation, but Chicago also kind of sucked last year. I mean, they did better than they did the year before. So are we setting him up to fail on our own expectations, Kelly?
That is something that I discussed in another league. I was really worried about the pressure that we're putting on, drafting.
No, you're fine. Please make your pick. The interesting part of a mock draft show is that you guys have to make picks while talking. And I'm trying to do better about seeing who's picking because I just threw, I'm forgetting all our guests. I think it was Iowa Mike, but I threw somebody under the bus where I kept asking them while they were drafting our dynasty.
Well, my queue ran out. I went over to just click and I'm like, oh no, I don't have what I wanted. Yeah. So I think the thing that I'm worried about is not so much if he's going to do well or not. Is he going to live up to the expectations that the media and the fans are putting on him? And that was kind of my caveat on another show was the Bears are going to be great as long as Caleb Williams doesn't shit the bed. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point. And honestly, my thing about Caleb Williams, for me, he is clearly the quarterback 1 of this class. I think there's an interesting case that we'll get to, and I'm trying to decide who I'm picking. So I'm not just timing out because I'm talking. I could not decide. But I think there's an interesting conversation in rookie drafts about whether you take a quarterback or a wide receiver with a first pick because of how hard it is to transition into the NFL as a quarterback, and all the expectations, maybe don't help that, but it is a harder transition than I think we give credit for, but it's the most hopeful time of year. So yeah, he's going to come save everybody's team.
No, I love it. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to the chat. Kelly just gave a shout out to the chat in the chat, but you guys are live this morning. And for folks who aren't drafting with us, the draft chat on Sleeper has been live all morning as well. Kel, they're talking about your tight end picks and your Arizona Cardinals picks. They're very sharp in the draft chat right now. But going back to the chat, Scampers brings up something for your point, Austin. He's already a millionaire. He's already won a Heisman, and he still hates losing. He is for him showing that emotion, and I think that's a really good point. Show me someone who doesn't care about losing, and I'll show you a loser, and that's not Caleb Williams. So I think that's a really good point. And Zion, we are going to get to your question here in just a minute because it actually plays into something I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the draft. But the next thing I wanted to look at, guys, when I'm looking at the draft board was this many quarterbacks early in a 1 QB draft. And obviously in a dynasty, you want to get your guy, and you guys both went quarterback early, but you're not the only ones. Looking at the first 5 rounds, there is 2 teams that have not drafted a quarterback yet. That's it. 3. I missed Gator Raiders on the end. 3 teams who do not have a quarterback. And I think a lot of this is everyone chasing CJ Stroud. I mentioned chasing the Sam Laporta dragon. I think we're chasing the CJ Stroud dragon last year, but you guys are getting the right young quarterbacks. Kelly, was there ever a thought in your mind? I know you're a Cardinals fan and I know you love the stack, but was there ever a thought in your mind in waiting and just taking what quarterbacks fell to you later and grabbing all the talent you could earlier in the draft?
There was my initial thought, but then when I saw 4 quarterbacks come off the board, I started to get a little worried because I've put so much stock in my flex positions that I need to maximize on that. And if I didn't grab either Kyler Murray or Jared Goff, which would only be like in a win now situation in my mind, then I'd be really hurting. Otherwise, I think I would have waited. I think there are plenty of great quarterbacks still available that are going to bring you lots of points. But I love how Austin grabbed Hurts. Hurts has been a points monster, fantasy points monster. I don't know if I love it as much for a dynasty, but there are so many quarterbacks coming up that there's going to be a way for him to still move forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, Austin, it's pretty clear to me you came into this knowing you wanted to walk out with your quarterback early because you took the second quarterback. I love the point Kelly brought up. Is she started seeing quarterbacks come off the board. She saw Allen, she saw Hurts. She was worried about, and then Mahomes and Jackson. She was worried about a run that she was going to end up on the back end of because she didn't pick again for a little while. So obviously at that turn, she needed to. Otherwise, you weren't picking again until 5-12, Kelly. So you could have been really left on the cold at quarterback in that situation. But Austin, you clearly knew you wanted Jalen Hurts, or you at least wanted a young quarterback early.
Yeah, I try and go quarterback early just because I do think there is an advantage to having some of those elite guys, that top 3 to 5 quarterback tier. If I had missed out on Hurts there, I probably would have waited for a pretty long time. But I do think there's an interesting thing where it's like there's a little bit of both hands. There's like some subtle differences between these quarterbacks, but also the quarterback class is deep enough right now that Gator Raiders doesn't have a quarterback, and I feel good about the quarterback they're going to get. Like, you get Trevor Lawrence.
I was just going to say,
like, there's still some great quarterbacks out there. So I really think like there's a benefit to waiting if you're able to get that. If you're getting true premiums early on. So I didn't feel like I was getting enough value at another position at the 211 that it was worth punting on quarterback a little longer, and that's why I went Jalen Hurts. I felt like that was enough an advantage that I wanted that.
I think that's a perfect. You brought up the next name I wanted to bring up. There, one quarterback who went, I don't want to say later, but I'm a little surprised at where he went, but I'm not surprised by who drafted him, and that's Anthony Richardson. I know Kevin, big Anthony Richardson guy, was screaming at him to get drafted in a draft earlier this season. So Anthony Richardson falling to him at 6. But are we surprised after what I'm going to call the established quarterbacks Richardson was the next one to go just after Caleb Williams. And obviously, we all have big hopes and dreams. But then are we more surprised, Austin, that Trevor Lawrence, who was the generational talent before Caleb Williams, is still available in a 1 QB dynasty? I know he hasn't really done it yet, but that seems a little off to me. So how do you feel about Anthony Richardson, who did not have a lot to show his rookie year, going as late as he did? I'm going to call it late, but it could be early depending on your opinion. And then Trevor Lawrence still having not been drafted. And I do want to point out before Austin answers, we don't care about table talk and mock drafts. This is about learning, and it is fucking shocking to me that Trevor Lawrence is still available this late in a dynasty draft. Austin.
Yeah, it's sort of shocking, not shocking to me. I mean, it's shocking because of the name Trevor Lawrence. But in terms of the actual player, it totally makes sense that Anthony Richardson and Caleb Williams would go before Trevor Lawrence because they run the dang ball. And I don't feel like Trevor Lawrence is kind of still known for his ability to create and run the ball the way he used to be. And so I do get like, he feels more of a pocket guy to me. And so I'm like, yeah, he falls down. And honestly, to that effect, like I would be comfortable. Like I wouldn't be mad if somebody was like, yeah, I took Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson ahead of Justin Herbert, ahead of CJ Stroud, even. Like as good as CJ Stroud was from an NFL perspective, and as good as he's going to be moving forward, he doesn't run the ball a ton. Neither does Justin Herbert. Like they are primarily doing their damage from the pocket. Yeah. And I think that's an important aspect when you're ranking these quarterbacks, and why I think Anthony Richardson is a big value right now in this draft.
Kelly, first I have to give a shout out to Scampers, who said he would not have sniffed a quarterback to the double-digit round. Sniff being in a call out to your David Njoku smells delicious play. But same question, Kelly. And are you shocked Trevor Lawrence hasn't went? What are your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence? Are we sleeping?
I am shocked. That was who's left in my queue when I looked over. And it's shocking to me because of how many QBs have already come off the bench. But then maybe that is the strategy, is knowing that it's still such a deep room and they're going to be happy with whoever they end up with. However, looking at the board, it looks like the majority of this strategy is either fantasy points in general on a single QB or that stack. And in my experience, those are the teams that tend to go far.
No, I think that's fair. I wanted to take a look. I was going to bring up, well, one of the things I wanted to keep an eye on were running backs going too early. But I have to say, this late or early into the season, this might be one of the better structured drafts I've seen. I don't know that I'm going to have an oops of the draft, because you guys have absolutely crushed not taking players way out of value, anything like that. So I'm actually going to go back to a question that was asked by a viewer, Zion, and says, what do we prefer, rookie running backs versus rookie wide receivers? Obviously, in Dynasty, landing young wide receivers is usually the play because they're going to hold their value for longer. But in general, Zion says he likes to lean on rookie running backs. I think our first rookie running back just went, whereas in this draft, Marvin Harrison was the 1-8, Malik Neighbors was the 2-10, Roma Dudunze was the 3-9. So the draft is going very much to conventional Dynasty, Kelly, where it's all about the wide receivers. And I'm just trying to like glance for the rookie running backs. I believe Kevin taking Jonathan Brooks at the 10-3 might be the first rookie running back off the board. Nope. Benson at 8-10 by Philadelphia. But we've had two rookies go after the 8th round, whereas the wide receivers all went in the first 3 rounds, Kelly. So maybe explain, do you prefer the younger wide receivers? Is that how you would approach Dynasty? And if not, why?
No, because for my particular style of play, I'm leaning on like a 1 or 2 year tight end that's shown their ability, or one that's still going strong. So I'm not looking at wide receivers. I feel like running backs, because we know that they don't last very long in the league. If there's one that you think is doing well, I think that go that way, because there's plenty of wide receivers, there's plenty of tight ends. Running backs have it the hardest, and get them young, build them in, and hopefully you hit. So yeah, I guess I feel like in this draft, and now that I'm talking out loud in our community in general, we're hearing so much about wide receivers, and we're hearing so much about Brock Bowers, for instance, and we're hearing so much about quarterbacks, where have we heard about these running backs? So I think it could be an unconscious bias just from what you know.
Yeah. Austin, same question. Obviously the given knowledge in Dynasty is go wide receiver early, but Kelly brings up the point that she'd prefer just established players in general.
Yeah, I think it really depends to me on like it depends year to year, first off. So like loved Bijan Robinson last year. That was a great
Yeah.
time to go after rookie running backs. And I think last year was like I would prefer rookie running backs over rookie receivers because I didn't love the receiving class last year. This year, it's clearly I love this receiving class. So it's hard to have a hard and fast rule with it. It depends from year to year for me. I think I tend to bias towards rookie receivers. Like if we're thinking redraft, like I still tend to bias towards rookie receivers because they often are able to integrate into their offenses more quickly and more consistently. Whereas running backs, it's so landing spot dependent, and it's hard to tell. Like you could have a really quality prospect from the running back perspective land in the wrong backfield, and then like it's kind of like okay, whatever, they're fine. So it just really depends. I do love though taking rookie running backs late in startups, late in rookie drafts, because I think there's a lot of volatility with some of these like day 2, day 3 running backs that can go under the radar, and there's a lot of upside that can be found there, even if just for a short period of time. Think of your James Robinsons, think of your Dameon Pierces, these guys that are fantasy superstars for a year and then they're done. Like there's a lot of advantages to be had during that period of time when they're experiencing that
You're
success.
almost out.
Thank you.
That's a really good point, Austin. And someone brought this up when we talked about the Superflex rookies, is you never know when you're going to be able to flip a rookie quarterback that you drafted in the 4th round for a 3rd and a 2nd round pick because he's going to start one week. In a 1 QB, running backs are the same way. Running backs is a thin position, and when someone sees a rookie blow up that you drafted in the 5th round, they might give you a 3rd or a 2nd round pick for him, and they could easily be James Robinson where they don't matter. If you were new to Mock It Like It's Hot, I will eventually scroll the draft board. The draft just gives us something to talk about. So don't worry about the picks that are being made. We will talk about these guys' picks and their strategies, and I will scroll the draft board in just a bit. But before we move on, Kelly, Gator J asks, how much does stacking matter in a 1 quarterback league? And obviously in Dynasty, in DFS, stacking is all the rage. In Dynasty, it's not necessarily something you look for. I did notice 4 out of our 12 teams built a stack in this first half of the draft, and you happen to be one of them. So Kelly, you brought up the stack when you made the stack. Is that just a sound strategy for you?
I've always found it to be a sound strategy. If I can gain more points, I know that it doesn't work all season long, but it works 99% of the season.
78% of the time it works.
We've got the 1 bye week, but as long as I have strong replacements, I will always stack if it's available.
Austin?
Yeah, I'm not a huge stacker. Just in redraft and dynasty, obviously, when we talk about best ball, I will just go all out on stacking. But in redraft and dynasty, I tend to not, just because like I don't know, if your quarterback gets hurt, then you're down 2 positions effectively because it impacts the player you stacked him with. So I tend to not like mandate that approach. If it happens, like I'm fine with it. Like I'm not explicitly trying to not stack, but I'm also not seeking it out.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about a player that we have not had a chance to talk about in the redraft, or excuse me, the mock draft show in a little while. I've been meaning to get to the older running backs for a while, and I just never get to them. There's always more interesting questions. But this episode, he happened to come up because the Equinox is Shia LaBeouf in our draft. And they brought up, this is why they went Barkley and Henry, because they don't care about age when it comes to running backs. They want to win now. And Derrick Henry is an interesting running back to me right now. He went a little earlier in this draft than what I've seen him go in some startups. Maybe that's just Shia's love for Derrick Henry. He goes at 6'8", Kelly. Obviously, you are a Baltimore fan. Derrick Henry in Baltimore is going to play, I want to say, a different role than what he played in Tennessee. In Tennessee, he had to do everything. He had to touch the ball 350 to 400 times per year, and he was still hyper efficient. In Baltimore, I think it's fair to say at his age, he could be a 250 touch back, but he could be more efficient and find the end zone more. Could the move to Baltimore extend Derrick Henry's career? And are we being a little bit too ageist when it comes to Derrick Henry specifically? Is he the running back where being 30 years old doesn't matter?
I think that Baltimore is the perfect landing spot for Derrick Henry, and I think Derrick Henry knew that Baltimore was the perfect spot for Derrick Henry, and I feel like this has been in the works for a very long time just based on the rumor mill, and it came to fruition. He is going to eat in Baltimore. And by that, I mean he's going to make meaningful plays that are going to really benefit whoever's fantasy team he lands on.
And do you feel 6'8" is an appropriate time to take him in a dynasty? That's just quick glance probably puts him as the RB10, RB12, which is
I
about
mean,
what he scores in fantasy, but he is also older.
I mean, maybe not in Dynasty. Maybe it could have waited longer. However, people know that this is a great move for Henry. And so he's going to go quick, I think, in no matter what format we're playing.
Yeah, I think redraft, he's going to be a real interesting pick this season, Austin. But how do we feel about Derrick Henry? Did Derrick Henry add 2 years to his career in Baltimore that makes him still worth a higher pick in Dynasty?
I think there's a decent chance of it. It's obviously hard to say. I'm not a medical provider, so I have no idea of like how to predict that, but maybe. And I think the odds of him extending his career are much higher now that he is in Baltimore, is how I would frame it. And I like his odds of doing well. Like he's probably going to be running against less heavy boxes, which is going to be good for him. And he's an explosive running back, so he doesn't just make his money, mowing guys down. Like he's got some speed to him. He can pick it up. So I feel good about the landing spot for him. I would feel comfortable taking him in Dynasty. Only thing I would say about it is with the team build that Shia LaBeouf took, Derrick Henry feels like a bit of an outlier because there's a bunch of young players on that team. And then having Derrick Henry, my concern would be that you don't get to appreciate the benefit of the value of Henry because you have a bunch of young players you're waiting to develop. But hey, those players hit early. It's great to have a solid top 10 running back ready.
No, I think it's a really good point. Guys, we're getting close to where I'm gonna have these guys recap their draft. I cut the show off at an hour, but I cannot let Austin get away without forcing him into a keep, trade, cut. And because it is tight end premium, I wanted to take 3 tight ends that are very, very different parts of their journey. Keep, trade, cut at their cost in Dynasty: Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts, and Brock Bowers. Austin.
Oh, really? I knew I had narrowed it down to tight end, but definitely did not expect it to be 3 guys that I like.
So Kelce is
so
obviously
much.
towards the end of his career still performing. Pitts, we're hoping, is going to get better. And Bowers, we're hoping, is Sam Laporta 2.0. So I thought putting these 3 against each other is interesting.
I hate this so
I knew
much.
you would. That's the only reason I even do this segment anymore.
Gosh, I'm gonna trade Travis Kelce to a contending team. That's my play there. I can figure that one out because there's got to be somebody that's like, oh, I need Travis Kelce to be the thing that gets me to a victory. So I will trade him and keep and cut. I mean,
which one of these 2 stud young tight ends would you like to be on the record of cutting?
I hate that you do this to me. I'm gonna keep. Okay, because of where we are, I don't know where Brock Bowers is going. So I'm gonna cut him, and I would keep Kyle Pitts because
I knew you were not going to cut Kyle Pitts. Plain and simple.
It's in the contract for me, Like I can't cut an Atlanta Falcon like that.
All right, Kelly, is this as hard for you as it is for Austin? Keep, trade, cut. The GOAT, Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts, and Brock Bowers.
It really is. I'm just going to say right off the bat that as much as I hate it because this could be Pitt's season, I'm going to cut Pitts only because he doesn't have the fire of the community behind him in making these lineups. So I need to capitalize off of that. And now I need to decide if I want to keep Kelce, who I desperately wanted to cut, but know that I could capitalize off of in one of 2 ways: points or trade. I'm going to trade Brock Bowers because of the engine driving rookie madness right now.
Yep.
If it's later in the season, I would be trading Kelce, but I'm going to keep Kelce, trade Bowers at this point in the season.
All right. For a dynasty startup, guys, they're going to make a lot more than 15 picks. And we're not even going to get through the whole 15 picks before we start talking about the teams here. Dynasty startups are usually 20 to 25 players pretty easily, but I'm not trying to keep anybody here longer than an hour. So you see the draft ending it at round 15. If you're getting into your first dynasty, it's going to go a lot longer than it's also usually a slow draft, not a fast draft, but there's no mock draft shows about slow drafts, plain and simple. Before we move on to having you two talk about your team, Austin, looking from, let's call it round 10 on, the double-digit rounds, is there any player that stands out to you as someone who should have maybe went earlier, that you're a little shocked they went as late as they did?
Jacoby Myers, anyone?
Oh,
Like, he was great last year, was he not? Like, he was,
yeah.
let's see, let's find his stats real quick in Sleeper. He was wide receiver 24, and he's only 27. And the only receiver ahead of him in that offense is Devontae Adams, who is great and going to continue being great, but he's like 33. He's not going to be around much longer. And so I love Jacoby Myers where he's at. I know the quarterback situation there is a little bit scary, but he was getting the utilization last year that it's worth taking the spin on me. So the fact that he fell that far to me is very surprising.
Kelly, same question. Anybody that you see in the double-digit round so far in this draft that you're just a little shocked fell as far as they did?
I think there were plenty. I don't want to just look at my own lineup,
No,
but
we're
I
going
was
to talk about
really,
your lineup in a second. So don't talk about your lineup. That's
all
literally
right,
the
then let
next
me
segment.
skip let me skip that. Surprised, I don't know. As we get into the later rounds, people kind of start to shake out. I think Trevor Lawrence is one that we touched on that seems to have fallen pretty surprisingly late to me. Another one I think might be Gus Edwards. I had him in my queue, and while he is what we might call one of the senior running backs, I like his new home in LA, and I've said it on other shows already. I think he's going to do very well in LA.
And before I have these guys talk about their teams, I want to draw attention to what's on the screen right now, which is the second half of the board. You may not be able to see all the players right away, but I want you to pay attention to the color coding to get ready for what you're going to see in a dynasty draft. In a tight end premium, you see a ton of orange blots everywhere because these are the people who are trying to capitalize on the tight end premium scoring and want to start tight ends in their flex. And you finally see those running backs start to go. You notice much more green in the middle there with the occasional speckle of people finally getting their quarterback or landing their backup quarterback. These are the kind of things you use mock drafts for. If you've never done a dynasty, keep doing dynasty mocks. You're going to get a feel for ADP. And the one thing I forgot to mention is there are no trades in a dynasty mock draft. In a dynasty startup, these picks would be moving between these teams trying to get future picks. It's an absolutely nuts thing that's going on. Kelly, it is now your turn to talk about your team. You started tight end in this tight end premium. You do not have to talk about every single pick, but if you had a strategy, if you were forced to change that strategy, if you were just really surprised to land some players, tell us about it.
The strategy's tight end bully. It's one of my very favorite, especially with multiple flex positions. And I'm sad that I actually didn't squeeze in another tight end somewhere here between like the 10th and 15th round. I don't see anybody else on the board that I even want to waste my last pick on. But tight end bully is where I was going with that. I really wanted to get Kyler Murray, to be honest with you, because I think the Cardinals are going to do really well this year. As far as wide receiver, I wanted
I just want
to
to
try
interrupt real
and
quick, Kelly. I'm sorry. HoofTube was here with us earlier, gave you a shout out, respected the Laporta pick early on, and Gator saw your strategy right away. All you need is tight end, F them other positions. So your strategy was not lost on the crowd. Your reputation precedes you. Now you can talk about your wide receivers.
well, I feel like the three that I landed in tight end are the strongest outside of Mark Andrews. So I'm really
Excellent
loving
draft.
this. Wide receivers, I wanted to try and stay young. I feel like I did fairly well. I definitely wanted JSN. I think he's got big things coming. Same at running back, Zach Charbonnet. I think he's got big things coming. Surprised to have seen Hopkins stay so long on the board. However, he is aging, and this is Dynasty, and I think he may have gone sooner. I got in the Goff stack. If my Kyler stack falls apart, we've got that going. Light the torch, Greg Dortch. The Cardinals are putting a lot of faith in Greg Dortch, especially the moves they've made at wide receiver. And I wish it was my turn because the player I want to pick, I'm like shocked that they're still on the board. So
yeah, I see now that nobody even really is here to make their 15th round pick. We have some autos happening, so maybe next week I make sure it's only a 14 round draft when we're doing these startups. You learn from the mock drafts, so no, I love that a lot. And if the player Kelly, I want to, if you get a chance, if the draft ends before you get to make that pick, I'd love for you to talk about that player, or you could talk about them now.
I mean, I could talk about them now because
mock
I'm
draft.
not going to get a chance to play this team. I'm really surprised to see Rondale Moore still on the board because I think the move for him is a good one. It was tough for him in Arizona. I think one, because Kyler Murray wants to throw the ball to the outside and he's more of that slot player. But two, I just don't think he got a fair shake, and I'm excited to see what he can do in Atlanta. So I'm kind of sad to see Rondale Moore still on the board, not because I'm a homer. The other one I surprised was Rico Dowdle, who made actually like a really surprising kind of splash in certain games, especially towards the end of the season. And that's one that I would definitely pick up in late rounds.
There you go. Austin, you know the deal at this point. I got you up. You took Justin Jefferson with that top pick. Grabbed Jalen Hurts, who every Philadelphia Eagles fan in the world wishes that was a stack they were able to talk about, but the Eagles dropped the bag on that one. So talk a little bit about your team.
Yeah, I was just trying to create the dream scenario. First off, I do want to apologize for my mistake on Travis Etienne. Josh pointed out to me in the chat that he got 73 targets last year. And I'm just, my response to that is it didn't feel like it.
It did not.
It did not feel like Travis Etienne had a good season, but he was the running back 3. So maybe he does deserve to be in the first 3 rounds. I just am not a big fan. Maybe it's because the Jaguars seem to be trash perpetually. But for my team, I am still experimenting with what does it look like when I really go the 0 running back route. And I tried to push it a little bit further this week. I went 8 rounds before I took my first running back. And I kept finding receivers that I like. So I wanted to see what happened. One receiver I wanted to acknowledge before talking about my running backs is Brian Thomas, falling all the way to the 7th round, almost the 8th round, if it weren't for me who saved him from falling. This guy, he's the 4th best receiver in this class. And I'm frankly surprised that he's fallen this far. Like, he's going to be a clear first round pick. He was a great receiver for LSU behind Malik Neighbors. Yeah, he doesn't have the status of Malik Neighbors, but the fact that he's fallen that far down is surprising to me.
Unless I missed anybody, he is the 4th rookie off the board, though. You just landed him an insane value because people started taking quarterbacks and tight ends. So.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. I think he should be higher. I could have taken him ahead of Mike Evans and felt fine with it. So a little bit surprised he fell. I took him mostly because of the value. I wasn't trying to go super young, but I was like, he's a great player, so I'm going to take him here. As far as my running backs go, getting Ramondre Stevenson in the 9th round.
When you said you went 0 running back and I went and saw your running backs, I was like, okay, this worked.
Yeah, like I feel really great about Ramondre. I don't love Ramondre Stevenson. Like I liked him, a couple years ago, and I've soured on him. I traded him away last year in some dynasty leagues, but getting him in the 9th round, I'm like, sure, that sounds great. And then Roschon Johnson, I still like the possibility for him to be efficient in the Chicago Bears offense. I know they have a crowded running back room, so like his ceiling might be limited. And then after that, I got 2 of my favorite rookie running backs, Marshawn Lloyd and Rasheen Ali, who we will talk about more in depth when we do those rookie shows. But spoiler alert, Marshawn Lloyd is my RB1 in this draft class. So getting him in the 12th round, I'm like, yeah, sure, take the dart throw.
Wow.
And then, Miles Sanders, Hopefully he makes a comeback.
Why not, right? You cover
Why
the
not?
Panthers.
Yeah. I got to show them some love at some point.
I think we're doing a rookie draft next week, so I'll be interested to hear a little bit more about your Marshawn Lloyd love there. Yeah, guys. So that pretty much brings the draft to an end. Kelly's making her last pick now. Oops of the draft. This was a hard one because, like I said, you guys did so very well. My screen just completely blanked out on me, so I don't know if it selected anything. There we go. That was weird. So I was going to pick on Shia LaBeouf a little bit. At first, I wasn't sure if I was going to pick on them about what was the other thing I was going to give them a hard time. I don't even remember what it is. Oh, I was going to give them a little bit of a hard time about the Derrick Henry pick, just that early in Dynasty. Still a great pick. But then I'm going to go, I don't think this was an auto pick because I didn't see auto pick. Darren Waller is literally talking retirement. And the 12th round is the middle round of a Dynasty startup draft. Darren Waller should not be drafted under any circumstance right now. I don't care. He was bad last year. And now he's talking about not playing in the NFL. So the oops of the draft falls to my friend Shia, who is drafted with us so often. It's all in love. But this is about know the NFL news. You would obviously have a lot more time to make a pick in a real draft, but don't take Darren Waller. Please do not take Darren Waller. He was good for a little while. He's not anymore. And that brings the mock draft to a close. Thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us this week. Tell everybody where they can find your work. The Sick Pod covering the Cardinals. You guys have just been crushing it lately.
Thank you. I have a new co-host who happens to be a local friend of mine from the marketing space and a season ticket holder. Her name's Charlotte Schaff. You can find her at Char Schaff. You can find me at Kelly in Phoenix on the app formerly known as Twitter for all things happening.
Austin, what do you got going on right now?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Austin_FFL. Look out for some upcoming off-season content. We'll be getting some stuff rolling, I'm sure, with Club Fantasy FFL. And follow all of my Carolina Panthers content for at Last Word on NFL.
Yeah, and our buddy Gator puts it best. Make sure you guys aren't leaving without hitting the thumbs up, the subscribe, all the things that's going to make the YouTube algorithm love us. But more importantly, please hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing. We do so many shows that I'm about to lay out for you every week, and we're trying to hit to 1,000 subscribers. You guys are going to be the key in that. Click the damn button. I'm only asking nicely a few more weeks. I'm going to start getting angry. We do 2 mock draft shows every week now. You have this show every single Saturday. We will be back next week, and I believe we're doing a rookie draft next week. And then Monday at 10 p.m., we have Mocking with the Stars, hosted by Chris and Gator J. And this week, they have Garrett Price from Dynasty Nerds. It is really about the stars on that show. They have had Howard Bender. They have had Hutchinson Brown. They are just absolutely crushing it at 10 o'clock on Monday nights. So if your mock draft fix was not done today, tune in Monday. Make sure you guys are there with us, and we're going to do another mock draft. And every Wednesday, no pun intended, is our live show. It is our flagship show. We are doing our Stars of Tomorrow series where we are talking about the rookies. And this week, it is the rookie running backs. And we invite Jagger May from Football Guys, one of my coworkers, just an excellent person in this industry. And that on top of every Sunday, we have the Dynasty After Party, though they just shot on Friday this week because Easter's tomorrow. So happy Easter if you celebrate. Happy Sunday if you don't. We have you guys covered. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you to Kelly. Thank you to Austin. Everybody have a wonderful Saturday. We will see you guys next week. Always remember, defense wins championship, offense wins fantasy football, and practice makes perfect. We'll see you at the next mock draft.